Hello and welcome to the Mariana Dalto Show, the podcast where small business owners share their stories, insights, and strategies for success. I'm your host, Mariana Dalto, and today we have a very special guest, Cedric Steele, a distinguished marketing expert with over 30 years of experience in driving innovation and brand growth for global giants, companies like Procter Gamble, Nestlé, Georgia Pacific, the Coca-Cola Company, and McDonald's. Cedric is the founder of the Topbox Consulting, and today we will be diving into Cedric's incredible journey with insights on innovation, leadership, and the future of marketing. Welcome, Cedric, to the show.
Hello, Mariana. It's such a pleasure to speak with you today. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining the show. All right, Cedric, I'm so excited for today's interview. I'm really excited to learn more about your business. So first, we would like to learn what inspired you to start Topbox Consulting.
Yes. So what inspired me to start Topbox Consulting was really just a pure passion for marketing. As you know, I've had a long career in corporate marketing at companies that you've mentioned. And one of the things that I have always loved about those roles is the opportunity to explore new ways to grow the business. I thrive in understanding consumer insights. I love learning about the latest trends that are happening in the industry. And where I really get excited is by taking that learning, identifying a new way to create a new opportunity, and then actually making something that can fulfill consumers' needs. So as I looked at my career, I pretty much had gotten to a place where I had lots of experience doing it in a corporate world, but I felt that there were other companies that I could benefit. And I wanted to do it in a way where I was also able to set the direction for the company and do something I found personally fulfilling. And so I started Topbox in 2023 as a boutique specialty consulting firm that is designed to help companies find new ways to grow through innovation.
That's amazing. That's so good. I love the journey. So what would you say for the small business owners audience that we have today? What will be the number one problem do you solve to the customers for your company?
Yeah,
What's the number one problem? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the number one problem that I see many businesses facing is the fact that there are such a limited amount of hours or time within a week to execute the many things that they have going on. And often, what happens is their attention is diverted to dealing with day-to-day operations. And that in itself is imperative for making the business run smoothly. However, when you have that type of focus on such short-term things that are in front of you, it becomes a real challenge to think about longer term, bigger picture, more strategic ways in which you might have your business evolve. And so the thing that I wanted to do was to be able to address the issue of bringing strategic thought to a business where they may not have necessarily the resources already in-house. And the benefit of working with a specialty firm like mine is that I'm going to bring a lot of best practices that I've amassed over a 30-year period from a number of large global multinational firms. Now, companies like Procter, Nestlé, Georgia Pacific, of course, they have resources that perhaps every small business won't have. But the thing that all businesses have in common is they all want to plan to grow. So the thing is trying to get the right resources to be appropriate for the situation and addressing that issue of not having enough time.
So this is great. I really appreciate it. So what's the number one question that you get asked all the time from an innovation standpoint from small businesses? What is something that is always like top of mind for small business owners that they get stuck and they ask you that specific question on innovation?
Well, I think the place where people get stuck the most is actually choosing what do I want to focus on?
Mm-hmm.
And in that question, a couple things are important. One is focusing on things that have broad enough appeal that you can actually make a business out of it. A lot of people will confuse innovation with ideas or inventions. So it's not
Mm-hmm.
about coming up with just some fanciful widget. The place that innovation really kicks in is you come up with a new solution that addresses a consumer problem in a way
Mm-hmm.
that they find value in it and they're willing to pay for it. So one of the things, as I mentioned, is focus. And then the other part that becomes a challenge is how do I differentiate myself versus competitor A, B, C, D? And so the places where both of those questions can be answered is really through some deliberate work on strategy, and ideally ones that are based upon some type of root in analysis. And so what I try to do is help companies apply analyses in a very quick way that they can get to the solutions of what can I focus on and how can I differentiate myself.
Okay, that's good. So if we continue the theme of challenging,
Mhm.
the challenge that business owners get, and mostly when you're launching a product, can you talk about, when you're launching a product that you managed in the past, how you or a business that you work with overcame the obstacles of launching the product, and you or the team, right? Because if you always work with a team in big corporations, like
Sure.
what would be the best, what would be the challenge that someone had within a project, and then how did you always overcome those obstacles within that challenge? And I know there's so many challenges that you face launching a product. There's like so many steps, so it could be like so many things, but maybe something that for a small business owner who has a small, like operations, maybe there's something specific that you can provide value to them.
Absolutely. So one of the areas that I've encountered in the past, which was a significant challenge and one that we had to be very creative in navigating, was the development of Minute Maid slushies and the frozen Coca-Cola and Fanta solutions that are at McDonald's. Now, when I say it was a challenging situation, um, we had really thought about the opportunity that both of those categories could live at McDonald's. However, the challenge that the world was not expecting was COVID-19. So despite what plans you may have in place, there may become some very significant things that prevent it. I think Mike Tyson has the saying, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And it really is telling in the sense that you may have really an idea how things are going to go, and then you need to very quickly pivot. Now, with McDonald's, it's an interesting company because corporately, McDonald's is known all over the world as a large corporation. However, when you think about the owner operators, is actually very many small businesses that invest in their local areas, and they really are very, I think, good about looking at their profit and loss statement and being very judicial about where to spend the money. So, although I'm talking about a larger proposition, again, thinking about it from a small business owner, it's how do I make choices that are going to make sense given this environment? And so, where that became relevant in this particular situation is you could get into that frozen value beverage segment a couple different ways. I mentioned frozen Coke and frozen Fanta. Those are products that are made on a piece of equipment that is very expensive and wasn't necessarily in all of the restaurants that McDonald's had. So it would have been very expensive to go and try and build that business at that point in time with COVID. So the pivot occurred to think about how can we still solve the issue of addressing that consumer need for an inexpensive, high quality beverage, but one that provides some different benefits versus the competition. And we came up with I think, a really good uh, interim solution to get things started that did not require the purchase of new equipment. It just required a different procedure to get a different type of beverage out of it. And so in that case, we were able to launch and grow the Minute Maid Slushies business. And then once the economic situation and COVID had died down and restaurants began to reopen, then that gave opportunity for us to expand further with the frozen carbonated beverages. And given McDonald's number of restaurants, that put them in a very advantageous position to compete against other industries, or I should say other segments of the market, like the convenience store market. So much more convenient to go through the drive-through and get a frozen Coke than pull up to a convenience store, get out, fill it yourself, and then get back on your way. So that's one example about how to overcome a challenging situation, but do it in a way that you're keeping sight of the big picture.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that experience with the two companies. That's really good. So let's pivot a little bit about marketing strategy and consumer insights. This is really important for the work that you do. It's heavily,
Absolutely.
involved in consumer insights. So how do you integrate, consumer insights into your marketing strategies to drive growth, and innovation? Like how do you use that as part of your process for doing the work that you do?
Yes, I appreciate that question. We have a proprietary process at Topbox. It's a 5-step process around the 5 Ds. All right. So the first one is about discovering. And in that very first step, we're doing all the work to try to understand what's going on with consumers, what's going on in the industry. Equally important is what are the different thoughts and perceptions within the company? What are the resources there? So it starts with doing your homework first to find out those things. The next step that we have has to do with design. And so design, you may have heard the term design thinking. It's all about putting yourself in the shoes of the consumer and designing a solution that is going to work for them in a way that you previously haven't done. And so that may require you to make small tweaks or adjustments, or it may open up the door to do something completely new and different. And I always want to think about it from all aspects of the marketing mix. It's the product, the packaging, the place you sell it in, whatever price point you may have it at. And we really focus on trying to get the right possibility or combination of solutions at that point. After we're done with design, then it's moving on to the actual development. So the difference there is design might be a conceptual idea that we have some idea about how it will work. But when you get into development, that's actually making the physical product. And key to that is rapid prototyping. So you want to think about, spending the minimum amount of resources that can give some tangible explanation of the product idea that you have or service. And so that might be a drawing, it might be 3D printing, it might be having chefs in a kitchen make a meal or a beverage. The point is you go from an idea to something physical and tangible. And then after the development, you move into the design, or I should say the deployment phase. So you've made the product as a single product, and then you've got to scale that product up. You've got to make sure that you've got a way to manufacture it, or if it's a procedure, make sure that the team that you're working with knows exactly how to deliver the product. Or it could be simply you're changing your pricing model. So how do you communicate that? How do you communicate value versus the other solutions? And then lastly, it's this notion of debriefing. So debriefing, it simply is a matter of looking back at everything that you've done up to that point and doing so with a critical eye of trying to find things perhaps that may not have worked ideally, or you see an opportunity to improve it upon. And then the other has to do with, let's see if we need to adjust because the market situation around us has changed. So often with any company that rolls out something new, another competitor will look at it, say, hey, that's a great idea, let's copy it. All right, so now what? You've got to evolve and you've got to change again. So as we put that final piece in place, it really sets up a nice iterative loop for you then to figure out, okay, well, let's go back to the discover and design phase. Let's see what's new and different now. Let's see how we can change, how we can evolve.
So that means like companies, they are always doing this loop. Like they are not static on, they do the research, they do the marketing, the launch. They need to keep innovating in a way where always keep doing research to see where the consumer is evolving and how they can improve their own products. Is that right?
Yes, I think you're going to find the companies that really know how to win and survive and take advantage of both good times and whether bad times, they are doing some type of version of that loop. I think a really great example, again, not necessarily small business, but everybody's familiar with Apple. Everyone's got an iPhone, or you're familiar with iTunes. I remember when I was in grade school, I got an Apple II computer, and that was the first computer that I ever got. But at the time, that was all that Apple made. It was a computer. And so, how do you get from this place of making a computer initially out of someone's garage to then being the largest producer of mobile devices? And I'm careful to use the word device as opposed to phone, because the power of, this thing that's in your pocket is so much greater than any computer would have been decades ago. But the point is, they didn't get there by accident. It was through deliberate planning. It was pivoting. It was through certainly just some great creative leadership from their team. And it was also a willingness for them to put a stake in the sand as far as design being the lead element, and having everything else flow out of that. And so I think the example there is not necessarily that we all want to be like Apple in terms of the technology, but it's the notion of it would be great if you could have that type of creative thought, if you could have that ability to change and pivot your business based upon what the opportunities or the challenges may be, and also a willingness to step out of what may be your current box that you play in. I think one of the things that often stifles lots of businesses is that, again, they're very focused on what are the operations of today, that it often becomes a blind spot to say, where do we need to evolve to?
That's great. And yeah, I agree with you 100%. And this pivots a little bit on talking about the future of marketing and innovation, because
Mhm.
this is where like you're not static. You really keep moving and evolving as much as you can
Right.
with what you build, with the technology, with the consumer, how the consumer evolve as well. So what do you see are the biggest trends or changes in marketing and the innovation landscape over the next few years? I'm sure, you go to trade shows, conferences, things that they talk about what's coming up within, innovation, or what are the biggest trends that you're seeing coming up, or things that the business owners can tap in for future research.
Well, I would say two of the most impactful trends that are going on that really are we're as a world going to have to contend with in the next 5 years is the role that AI plays in terms of not only your business and how you run it, but in terms of what your consumers may expect. So AI is at its infancy, but the adoption rate is faster than any other technology that we've seen. I'll say for myself in my own business, I'm a solopreneur, but I very quickly have learned to use AI to where uh, it almost becomes two quasi employees for me, just in terms of the
Hmm.
way I think about using it for analysis and reporting. And that is a tool that I did not have a year and a half ago. Chat GPT is just very new, but now you've got Copilot, you've got other solutions that are out there. And I would say what's important too is that it's not just using those sites that I mentioned, but the way that it's becoming embedded in other pieces of technology. So that's really going to be important, is to think about and I would challenge businesses to think about, to what extent do I want to adopt, and what extent will AI impact me? There's no scenario in which it won't impact you. So the
Oh,
question
yeah.
is, yeah, how much do you want to be knowledgeable about it, and what do you want to do to leverage it? The other thing that I think is going to become very interesting is the way in which uh, currency evolves. So you may recall during the initial stages of the COVID shutdown, I remember walking into Micro Center, and they had a sign pasted on the door that said "No cash accepted." So all of a sudden, it's not a problem because I do have a credit card, but what it made me think about was, huh, what if businesses didn't take cash anymore? I think we also have to ask those what ifs. What if businesses don't take credit cards anymore? So the question becomes, what role does things like mobile payment, what impact potentially could things like cryptocurrency have? And then if you are going to invest in either of those, of course, there's a number of different variations under them. So how do you make sure that your business can do business with people in the way that they want to uh, have it happen? And then obviously for a lot of businesses, Amazon, I think, has really changed the footprint as far as what a storefront really is.
That's right.
As opposed to brick and mortar, the notion about the virtual storefront and the role that delivery may play as a part of anyone's business. So even as a solopreneur, you can have a global business with a global footprint and be able to transact in multiple currencies. That wasn't necessarily possible just a few decades ago. And the rate at which that changes is just very rapid. And then lastly, I think the notion about how do you staff your business when you need services? So it may not necessarily be the full-time US-based employee. It might be fractional labor that's delivered from someone halfway around the world, depending on what your situation is. But those are things that entrepreneurs now are having to contend with that weren't necessarily big drivers a few years ago. So that's just my opinion on what's in store for the next 5 years.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of changes coming up. I mean, it's already changing day by day, hour by hour. So I agree with you
Yes.
100%.
Yes.
Well, Cedric, it's been an honor having you in my show. Those insights that you shared today and everything that you do for your business is super helpful for everyone. So thank you for sharing those insights. Before we wrap up, could you share where our listeners can learn more about you and your business, where they can reach you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And before I do that, I just wanted to thank you again for inviting me on. I think it's really great what you're doing to help expand business owners' knowledge and keep them abreast of new things going on. So I really wish you the best with your podcast in this. And regarding myself, so my company, Topbox Consulting, best way to reach me is through our website at www.topbox.co. So you'll see the URL here and in the meeting notes, or you can reach out to me over LinkedIn. I am like a lot of other small businesses in the process of putting the various channels in place and communication mechanisms. So I'll just be the first to say that I am one of many who is now having to wear multiple hats on the business, and part of that has to do with communication and technology. So just like I mentioned before, sometimes the day-to-day pressures make it a little bit slower, but at any rate, those things are to come. So, but for now, if anyone like to reach me, you can schedule time through my website. There's a place to block time on the calendar, you can reach out to me and email me, and then my phone number is on there as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. This is great. I'm sure, whoever is interested in the work that you do, can reach out to you. I will put all the details in the show notes for everyone to take a look at that. And then for all our listeners that they're tuning in today, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review if you enjoyed this episode. And thank you so much, Cedric, for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.